Hey everybody, this is Denise Brown. Thanks for being here during our Caring Conference. We are focused on courage. And earlier today, I think it was during Elizabeth's presentation, there was a conversation about promises. Our scheduled presenter had a family emergency, so I thought I would just punt and have a conversation with you about promises. So let's think about what promises do we make during a caregiving experience. And I'd love for you to share in the chat room about a promise that you didn't realize you were making, and that you think, oh gosh, this is a promise. So feel free to share in the chat room a promise around something you've made as it relates to caregiving or parenting or anything else that's going on in your life. What's a promise that you've made? When we think about a promise that's pretty common during a caregiving experience, which is, I promise to never put you in a nursing home. And my mom had put that on me several years ago. And she said, oh gosh, you're not going to put me in a nursing home. You're going to take care of me. And I never responded. I just thought, okay, I understand now what the expectation is. And I think sometimes our carees can be in a fearful place. Makes sense, right? My mom's fear is being in a facility. And I can understand why she would want to be assured that she is not going to be in a facility. Interestingly enough, my parents did have to move to a retirement community. And it was a temporary move. That's how we positioned it, with the hopes that it would be permanent. My dad loved it. My mom hated it, so they moved. And now they live across the street from the retirement community in an apartment in just a regular condo building. Okay, so let's think about promises that we could actually make to ourselves. Yeah, so promises create expectations which we do not realize, right? And I think in the moment, especially if a caree is coming to us in a place of fear and talking to us out of a place of fear, we are so aware of that fear and want to take that fear away, so we might make a promise. And so in the chat room, there's a conversation about this promise of not putting someone in a nursing home. So someone is sharing, I fulfilled my promise to my mom not to put her in a nursing home, even though that was the most challenging time I went through. Yeah, right. Yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging. So let's think about promises that we can make. And I am so happy to present these to you because I want to hear what you think. What are the promises that you're hearing that resonate with you? And which are the promises that I'm going to share that you would tweak or change or rewrite? And what are the promises that you would add? So there's another promise in the chat room that I think we might have an experience with, and that is I made a promise to my mom to take care of Dad while she was passing away. I knew that she would want me to help with him. I am helping him as he continues to age, but it is challenging when I don't get help from siblings. Yes, and it really goes back to the idea that promises create expectations which we do not realize. And I also think that's another really powerful example of our family member in a place of fear. Please take care of your father. So we want to give peace of mind to someone. We want to really alleviate that fear. And it goes back to something I had said earlier, which is what I think in caregiving we are looking for most, which is relief. And I also think that's what our caree is looking for too, relief. Okay, so here's the first promise. I promise to do my best to take care for you and for myself. So this idea that caregiving is not just about a caree, it's also for ourselves. So when you think about your promise to do the best to care for yourself, what does that look like? And Charday is sharing in the chat room that she can make the promise to be as present as possible. I love that. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Okay, so how do you take care of yourself? And I think when we understand what we need in terms of our self-care, our next step is to actually tell people that we need that. So for me, it's swimming. And when I would tell my parents I need to swim, they were totally into that for me. And they would say to me, did you go to the pool today? Have you gone to the pool today? So when I shared what I know is part of my self-care and that it was a priority for me, I was able to get, in some regard, it felt like buy-in, that this was a priority. So oftentimes my parents would be very understanding that that particular time of the day was not appropriate for me to help them because I was in the pool, at the pool. So when you think about what your self-care is, also think about how do you communicate that so people understand it's a priority so that everybody respects the priority, which goes back to what Lauren was talking about with boundaries. So Patty is sharing, I promise to take care of myself and my health. Right. Absolutely. And I think sometimes the message we hear is that we take care of ourselves so that we can continue to take care of others. And that's true. And I also think we take care of ourselves because we deserve to be taken care of. And it's not a contingent situation, meaning it's not because of caregiving. It's just because we are important, we are valuable, we have a future, we want to arrive in our future in our best selves possible. Okay, so that actually kind of relates to the next promise. Promise to get help for both of us so we both stay in a good place. I used to hear it during my presentations on a regular basis when I would say, let's think about what help we can use during caregiving. The pushback I would get is, my caree will not receive help. And it's important to know that we have help for ourselves that again is separate than help for our caree. So it's frustrating if we are suggesting help and our caree says no. And it still means that we can think about, okay, what will help me? What's the help for me? So the help for you could be that maybe you have a cleaning service that comes in twice a year before 2 important events that you might host in your house. And that's help for you. Maybe help for you is that you have teenagers in the neighborhood shovel your snow, and that's help for you. So there's 2 categories of help. Sometimes they collide and overlap, and sometimes they are separate. And if your caree will not receive help, it's important for you to think about, okay, and what's the help for me? What's the help for me? I promise to be truthful about my limits. We have been talking about this today as well, to understand that we are not superhuman, that we have limitations. Just like the day is limited to 24 hours and the week is limited to 7 days, we can have our own limits. I think about our limits as, in many ways, operating a store. So when are our store hours? When does our store open and when does it close? And it could be around communication with siblings or other family members. Perhaps you'll answer texts before 9 o'clock at night, and afterward, the store is closed, so you don't manage texts. It also could be related to how available you are. So it could be that you're available to your siblings for an update on Fridays, and that's when you send the email out. But it's too overwhelming to send an update every day. So you decide what your store hours are. And I have found it so helpful when I think about my store hours. You can also think about that you are operating this enterprise. You can think about it as a store. It also helps to think about, okay, so in order for me to operate this enterprise called caregiving, I have to be in bed at this time, and I wake up at this time, and I take breaks throughout the day at these times. Okay. There we go. So you can really be honest about your limits without it being a judgment against you. We judge ourselves so much during caregiving because we just want to be the best at this. And we are the best when we are honest about our limits. In the
Can I borrow your phone minute, Bruce?
Oh,
I don't want to hang up from this.
Kathy, I'm going to beat you. In the 6 stages workbook, I also talk about how we can really be specific about our limits. And our limits aren't only about our day, but they are things like our stomach. When does our stomach turn and we think, okay, I've reached my limit? And it could be around hands-on care. It could be around relationships. It could be about exposure to certain situations to know, okay, my stomach is churning. I've reached my limit. And then to understand that and then to put in place what happens when you've reached your limit. Okay. Yes, Lauren, that's funny that you went to a restaurant that has store hours at 6 a.m. until close, right? We want to be very specific about our store hours. And you can be specific around your store hours when you take the break. Okay, my store is open from 6 to 6 with breaks at 10 and 2 and a 1-hour lunch break at noon. Another promise we can think about is that we forgive ourselves for our bad days. I wish that we didn't have bad days. I wish we had an unlimited supply of patience. I often think if Target sold bottles of patience, it would become often unavailable because we're always looking for more patience. And a lack of patience, because of all that's required of us, can lead to a bad day. And it simply is just a bad day. I think when we have a bad day, we turn it into we're a bad person, we're in a bad life, and we make it bigger than what it is, which is a bad day. And if we even got more specific, it could be just a couple of bad moments within a day. It might not be that the whole day was bad, it was just a few moments. And we want to make sure we understand it was just a few moments. Not judge ourselves as being bad and awful, but just knowing that we had bad moments and that we have an opportunity to get to better moments when we forgive ourselves. We can forgive our caree for their bad days. My dad and I have had such clashes in the past 3 months. And something that I respect about both of us is that we have clashes. We are really navigating some difficult situations. He gets angry, I get impatient. We take a break, and then everything's okay. And I like that. So when I think about what I've learned about my dad is that he just does not hold a grudge. That is amazing. Amazing. And so I'm really learning that from him, that we speak our mind, we disagree, we take a break, and then we're back at it. What is the solution? How do we work this out? What can we do differently? Okay, this one is talking about how much does a caree want to know about their diagnosis? So it's, I promise to be as honest about your diagnosis as you want me to be. And in order for this promise to happen, we actually have to have the conversation around how much do you want to know? And this is an ongoing conversation. And I thought of this because of a family caregiver that I knew years ago who took care of his partner. And when his partner's cancer diagnosis became terminal, he withheld that from his partner. So he made a decision really that impacted both of them. And truly, I believe he just feared having that conversation, so decided, well, I don't have to have this conversation. It'll be okay for both of us. And it's so important to know, how much does your caree want to know? How much do you want to know about your diagnosis? And then the promise can happen. But we can't promise unless we know. And it's an ongoing conversation. And it could be a conversation that happens before a doctor's appointment, after a doctor's appointment, during a hospitalization. So for instance, this former family caregiver was told by the healthcare professionals during a hospitalization that his caree now was terminal. So it wasn't a conversation with everybody. And I would say that you'd want to know too, okay, if a doctor pulls me aside to give me an update about your diagnosis, how do you want me to handle it? Do you want me to make sure that we go to your hospital room to ensure that you're part of the conversation? It's so helpful to know this because then it leads to, I promise to do as you wish around the information around your diagnosis. And this is a conversation that can happen around if you are unable to receive information about your diagnosis, how do you want me to handle it? How do you want me to handle information about your prognosis? Okay, so I promise to advocate on behalf of both of us so we can receive what we need and want. And again, it's this idea that we are this amazing advocate on behalf of our caree, and we can do it for ourselves too. I like this idea that what we're doing for another is what we can do for ourselves, and both are equally important. It doesn't have to be, which we've been talking about today, or it's an and. It's an and. And I also think we also can apply this in terms of our relationships with our caree and our conversations with our caree. It's a reminder that I'm doing everything on my part to advocate for you, and I'm going to advocate for myself right now. And here's what I need. And here's why it's important to me. And here's why we're going to do it, or we're going to think about it, or we're going to continue talking about it. So advocacy is within a system like the healthcare system, within relationships. It's also within ourselves as well. Okay, here's the next promise to our caree. I promise to do my best to include interests, hobbies, and relationships that you love as often as I can in the day. So this idea that we're looking at our caree as a full individual with lots of interests, hobbies, and relationships that we're going to do whatever we can to keep in the day. And I also think this is important for us to know that we're going to do it to our best, knowing that there are some days where we're great at it and other days where it's just impossible because of a lack of resource, a pandemic, a lack of time, a lack of energy, and that's okay. And again, just as we judged our bad day as just a few moments in time, we can judge those days where we just felt like, oh gosh, I just couldn't get to that hobby or interest as a moment in time. We really need to judge ourselves based on the entire experience and keep that view of the entire experience, because overall, you're always doing your best at this, always. And so you probably have an idea of what's coming. So because we do it for our caree, we do it for ourselves, right? We include our own interests, hobbies, and relationships that we love in our day as often as we can. Earlier, I had talked about decisions we make without looking for approval, without apologizing for, and without explaining. And we can think about ensuring that we keep all these dimensions of our life and our day in this way as well. So Phil Donahue was a talk show host here in the Chicagoland area many years ago, decades ago. And I always remember during one show, he said, in our family, we have a rule: never complain, never explain. And I thought that was so great. And we can think about never explain as it relates to decisions we know that are right for us. The decision, for instance, to take 5 minutes for ourselves. We don't have to spend 5 minutes explaining it and hoping that someone's going to approve it. We can just do it. I need 5 minutes. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Bruce McIntyre, who's one of our colleagues, presented with his wife, Kathy, many years ago in Oklahoma, and I was the follow-up presenter, which was very difficult because they were amazing. And Kathy talked about how she managed her rare disease, and it was because she gave herself a bubble bath on Thursday evenings, and she got up late in the morning on Saturdays. And that allowed her to feel as healthy as possible. And she just told her family, this is what I'm doing. And then they accepted it. And she stuck to it. So she didn't say, oh, this Thursday I don't need to do it. The kids aren't feeling well, or the kids have a lot of homework, or we, whatever, they need me for this. It was, she just did it. Okay, it's bubble bath time. I'm going to be in the bath for for an hour between 7 and 8. I'll see you at 8. Yeah, we can. Yeah, Patty is sharing that it's easy to fall into negative thoughts. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so here's one that I think also is contingent around availability of resources and safety for both of us. So it's this idea that I promise to let your wishes about your treatments and quality of life drive the decisions I might have to make to the best of my ability, meaning that there are situations and circumstances that could happen in the future we just can't predict. So I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, knowing that there might be some challenges and situations I cannot predict, which means that what I can do might be out of my control, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. Okay, and then here's the last one. I promise to walk this journey with you to the best of my ability. And notice that I didn't say perfectly or exceptionally or without mistakes. It's this idea that we do it to the best of our abilities. Okay, so what do you think of these promises? Feel free to share in the chat room. What do you think? Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So in the chat room, they are giving me thumbs up. Okay. And you can actually think about putting up promises on your refrigerator or keeping them handy for you to refer back to, which is then a guide around what's my next action. You also can think about, what do you value in your life? What's your priority? And you can create promises from your values. So for instance, I had talked earlier that I value the truth, which is why one of the promises is, actually two of them relate to truthfulness, honesty about your diagnosis, and truthful about my limits. So those values of integrity and honesty and truth drove these promises. So you can think about, what do you value? And you can create your own promises based on those values. And that way you are living your life. And I love when we are able to tap into our values, because then we are living our life rather than living life for someone else based on their values. So if you're thinking, hi, I like these, I'd like to do my own, think about, what do you value? And then you can create your own promises. Okay, and Darlene is sharing the chat room. The promises to my daughter are easier than the ones for ourselves. Exactly. So it's so important to know what we do for others, what we can do for ourselves. I had a really pivotal conversation with my niece this past summer, and I was talking about what my parents were expecting of me and what I was going to do about it. And she said, Aunt Denise, your quality of life matters too. And that was eye-opening for me. And it wasn't because it was a conversation about my self-care, because I understand that, I embrace it, I do it. It was something bigger than that. It was quality of life for me too. That was really helpful to understand. I have quality of life too. I deserve quality of life. I'm going to protect my quality of life. I'm going to create my quality of life. Okay, so Christine is sharing in the chat room that's this habit of saying, for both of us, is strategic and is reality as a family. So She is sharing, I say, I promise out of self-inflicted guilt or wanting to feel good about my intention. It's something that I can have control over. So now I can retract my promise to say, I intend. This is my intention. You could also think about these are promises, but you could also create wishes. The wishes for yourself, the wishes for your caree, the wishes for your family. I also talk about rules in the 6 Stages Handbook. What are the rules for your family? You can think about what are the rules that you've accepted which are not good rules? This idea that I am a good mother if I do these things. You can instead say, my rule is I am a good mother. I am a good daughter. I am a good friend. The fact is you are, and you don't have to add this qualifier of if I do these things, you simply are. You are a good friend. You are a good daughter. You are a good parent. Okay, all right, so there you go. So you can write promises, you can write intentions, you can write wishes, whatever works for you, whatever language feels right for you. We are going to take our longer break and we're going to come back at top of the hour to finish up our afternoon. Okay, thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you in just about 35 minutes.